We're now going to move on to our third speaker, and that is she is FEMINISA from Brazil. She's a feminist activist dedicated to domestic and sexual violence survivors issues, and is going to speak on how far can trans activists go to chase women. So thanks so much for coming, FEMINISA, and over to you.
First, I'll present myself. I'm Isa. I work with survivors of sexual and domestic violence for the last 7 years, or yeah, I think it's 7 right now. And mostly I talk about domestic violence online. That's what I do. I just started and I had no intentions of becoming a feminist icon or figure at any point in my life. It just happened because I was talking about something that no one was talking about. And I started talking about psychological violence against women in domestic violence context. And it just became huge. And since 2021, we have a new crime in Brazil, in Brazilian law, in our penal code, is the psychological violence against women, exclusively. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do and what I talk about. I'm here to talk about my story with this guy who, for some reason, believes he's a woman. He's a politician from Brazil, and he was the most voted woman in the country in 2020. Well, his name is Felipe, aka Erica Hilton, and I'm gonna talk about my case because now apparently I'm a criminal or something. At least that's what the Sao Paulo state think about me. So in 2020, this person was elected as the most voted woman for Sao Paulo's chamber, and also the most voted woman in the country. And actually also the only woman to make the list of the top 10 most voted candidates in the country in history. So he was the only woman in this list ever in the country's history. It's very important for our national politics and law in Brazil because it's probably the most stupid one. And because of that, the most serious one. I never heard of any case like my case. And of course, I know that in Brazil, as a radical feminist, I'm the most known radical feminist in the country. So of course, everything would come to my head and these guys hate me because people are listening to me and I'm pretty sure I make sense. So it happens a lot for a long time, but this was like the most absurd thing. And now some information for you, Anna. In Brazil, everyone is allowed to change their sex on their birth certificate, and there's no criteria. And you can choose, you can just put that your sex is non-binary in your birth certificate. So we don't have reliable data about feminicide or domestic violence or sexual violence anymore in the country. So yeah, for me personally, I would say this is a problem. And also, in our law, and I'll talk a bit about it, the only kind of discrimination that is 100% legal in the country is misogyny. Is the only kind of discrimination that is not a crime. So things are wild in Brazil right now. And actually, what happens is that our Supreme Court equiparated transphobia to racism, which is one of the most horrible crimes we have in our penal code and in our law, of course, because of our history of slavery. But they just equiparated one thing to the other, but it wasn't like the right process, I would say. It's too complicated to explain in English, but in our law, there's no crime if there's not a previous law which would define it. So we don't have any laws defining transphobia. This means that transphobia is not a crime in Brazil. But I was charged with 5 counts of racism by Sao Paulo state for saying that the most voted woman in the country is a man. That was all I said. So yeah, as I said, it's one of the most horrible crimes in our law. It has a special law, like We have our penal code, and we have like a special law for racism, again, because of our history, because we owe this to Black people in the country, and they just equiparated it to transphobia because they understand this is a kind of social racism. And yeah, in Brazil, pretty much everything, I mean, I think it's everywhere, but in Brazil, really, it's completely out of control. And like everything is transphobia. If I say I'm a woman, I'm being transphobic. If I say I have my period, I'm being transphobic. If I say my name is Isabel, it's probably transphobic too, because it ends with an A. I don't know, like things are too much right now. And yeah, so basically, the whole process of turning transphobia into a crime in the country was completely illegal, and it breaks basic principles of our constitution. But people, yeah, these people from the left who are claiming to be fighting for saving democracy from Bolsonaro and stuff in the country, they apparently don't care at all. They don't care if we're breaking our own constitution. And yeah, so this person, Erica, Felipe, whatever, he started like a campaign years ago. So he would always post on Twitter and other social media that he was suing me. And also he was using the fact that was actually a lie, that he was suing 50 people. And he would pay for the documentation of vulnerable trans people with the money we would pay him because he just didn't like what we said. I don't know who are the other 49 people in this list because the only name he mentions is my name. So I'm not actually sure there are other 49 people. And actually, he never sued me, ever. It doesn't exist. So it's been years that I'm hearing like, oh, Erica Hilton suing Feminisa, Erica Hilton suing Feminisa, and this is actually not happening. Many people believe in it, and I actually, I learned about these charges pressed against me when a journalist from the biggest newspaper in the country came to talk to me and asked for my opinion on it. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I've never heard of it. The government and the state, they never gave me any documents. I have no access to this suit and these criminal charges. Until now. So it was in June. It was actually, that's an interesting part of the story. It was 2 days after my ex-boyfriend was convicted for violating the restraining order. So I was happy for 48 hours. And then it was too much for a feminist. So I think they found a way to end it. And it was 1 day before we have the LGBT parade in Sao Paulo on June. And it's huge. So it was a day before that. And of course, it was part of the campaign for this politician who was elected again this year, last month, for the federal chamber. Now, I'm not sure about what happened after that because I just learned from these charges in this newspaper and I never heard of it again from anyone, like an official document or officer or public ministry member. So I'm not so sure. If I would guess, this is a group, right? So this person, this politician, he's part of the human rights group in the chamber. And there's this other guy, the prosecutor, he's like part of the human rights group in the public ministry. And he was the one to press these charges against me. They work together, of course. And there's another guy, a third guy, and he's a lawyer. And he's part of the human rights group of the organization, like we would say is like the bar for lawyers in Brazil. They're all work like, they're friends, let's say they're friends, they're good friends. And they help each other a lot. What happened after that was that now, this guy, this last guy, this lawyer, he's representing my ex-boyfriend on the rape suit. So He was convicted for violating my restraining order. He ran away from Brazil. He's not in the country right now. He's actually in Indonesia because I am here, and that's how crazy he is. And this guy, this LGBT specialist lawyer, is working on his defense, and they're all friends with Erica Hilton and also his lawyers. It's all the same group. So out of a sudden, this guy is on my ex's defense on a case of rape. And that's how far they went. Before that happened, it was in November 2020, I used to be invited to TV shows, podcasts, YouTube channels, magazines, all kinds of media to talk about my work, my thoughts, and my ideas on domestic violence, but that's my field of study and work since always. And in 24 hours, I lost 11,000 followers. It was just like, it was crazy. I couldn't leave my home for weeks. And after that, then things got really wild. So now I am a proudly canceled influencer, I would say. And yeah, my life changed completely because of that. And I was completely deplatformed. So I'm not invited to talk about domestic or sexual violence anymore, ever. I'm not allowed in places or events. I was pretty much expelled from society after that happened. And even some liberal feminists that I used to work with sometimes in domestic violence issues, they actually unfollowed me and sent me messages saying, I'm sorry, I'm unfollowing you because I don't want to lose my jobs. And by jobs, they mean like campaigns, like digital campaigns and social media for brands. And they actually, when they're offline, they agree 100% with anything I would say, like everyone else. I never spoke to anyone who wouldn't believe or agree with my ideas on self-ID policy. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what happened. Also, yeah, so after the whole situation with my ex happened, it was so weird because before that, before the situation with the politician, I was believed, I was respected in feminism as an activist, especially for working in domestic violence issues. And this whole thing happened, and suddenly all feminists and liberal and they have no basis, but they would call themselves feminists. They wouldn't believe me. They actually supported my rapist because I am transphobic. And this is happening until now. So some of them actually witness it. And they depose, like, I don't know how to describe it in English because the terms are different. But they were in court against me, literally lying to support him because I am transphobic. So things got completely out of control and absurd. My opinion and my guess is that the judge of this case that I have no access to didn't receive the accusations, because in Brazil, like the public ministry, they can like offer the charges, but then a judge has to receive them. And then I would receive documents and I would have to go to court or something. So my guess is that the judge didn't receive them and the suit actually doesn't exist. So after it went out on media and everyone was talking about it and they made like a circus around this whole situation, I never heard of the case again. And this politician never mentioned my name again. And I think is because nothing will actually happen. But in this article on this newspaper, they said that I could get 25 years in prison. What is also a lie, like huge lie. If you would kill someone in the most horrible way, first degree in Brazil, you wouldn't get 25 years in prison, but it was intentional We have an article in our penal code, which would define like how much time a person could get for every crime. But they decided to completely ignore it. And so they just took like the maximum time a person could get for the crime of racism and multiplied by 5. And so that was on the news that I could get 25 years in prison. That's not true, not even close to the truth. When I talk to people, even people, progressives like leftists from other countries, when I say that like I'm a feminist and I work with survivors and stuff, they want to talk with me. And then when I tell them my story and my case in Brazil, they all get a bit confused. Like, oh, I thought feminists would be together with the LGBT XYZ. And then I start talking to them and they all get very surprised, but they all say it makes a lot of sense. So people from every country, I've talked to people from Belgium, Germany, Australia, India, every corner of this world. And no one, like after they think for 5 minutes, no one believes transsexuality exists. And it's so easy. And I feel so comfortable to say it doesn't exist. And they
Yeah.
just look at me, they agree.